The air in the longhouse does not merely sit, it breathes. It is a heavy, rhythmic lung of peat smoke and the sharp, acidic tang of drying pine needles, clinging to the rafters like a memory that refuses to fade. You can hear it before you see it, the wet, rhythmic thud of a stone pestle against a mortar, a sound that has echoed through these timber walls since the first frost claimed the eaves and turned the world outside into a white, silent tomb. Here, bathed in the dim, amber ghost light of a single tallow lamp, the frantic hum of our modern world is swallowed by the slow, deliberate crawl of the hearth. In the 14th century, the fire is not a luxury. It is a fickle, demanding god that must be fed with the precision of a surgeon and the devotion of a saint. To lose the coal is not merely an inconvenience, it is an invitation to the great silence, that predatory cold that does not just touch the skin, but anchors itself deep within the marrow of the bone until the blood itself begins to forget how to flow. Survival here is a forgotten language written in embers. It is the secret art of the slow match, a braided fuse of dried bracket fungi and charred linen tucked away in a scorched ox horn. This is a heartbeat of fire, carried like a sacred relic across miles of desolate moorland and through rain that feels like iron needles. Watch the calloused hands of the elder. See how he cradles a single, fragile spark as if it were a newborn bird, shielding it from the reaching fingers of the north wind. There is no switch to flip here. There is no humming box in the yard to provide the illusion of security. There is only the desperate friction of wood on wood, the smell of scorching dust, and the sudden miraculous birth of a glow that smells of ancient earth and a hope that has no name. As the first flame finally catches the tinder, the shadows on the wattle walls begin to dance, awakening the ghosts of ancestors who found a way to thrive in the crushing dark. This is the first great betrayal of our age, the belief that light is cheap. In the medieval winter, light is a hard-won victory, a tether to the world of the living. But as the smoke rises to meet the thatch, it carries a chilling realization. The true generator is not made of copper and steel. It is forged of patience, flint, and the sacred duty to keep the darkness at bay, a darkness that is already beginning to hunger for the stores we have gathered. Outside the stone walls of the granary, the wind howls with a lupine hunger, scouring the valley for any soul left unprotected by the light. But here, behind the thick, weeping masonry, the silence is heavy, a physical weight that smells of dry dust and ancient earth. The only sound is the rhythmic, papery rustle of grain being turned by a wooden shovel, a dry whisper that sounds like the breath of the land itself. The floor is lined with sweet-smelling rushes and sprigs of dried mint, a fragrant, desperate barrier against the rot that waits, patient and cold, in the damp soil below. To look upon a winter's store in the year of our Lord 1300 is to look upon a map of survival. Every sack of rye and every jar of salted fat is more than food. It is a day stolen back from the grave. This is the architecture of endurance, where the cellar is the only fortress that truly matters, and the belly is the only clock that dictates the rhythm of life. We have forgotten the true weight of the harvest, the way a handful of wheat feels like rough gold against a tired, calloused palm. In the heart of the village, the art of preservation is not a chore, but a sacred ritual of salt and smoke. Above us, the rafters groan under the weight of heavy sides of bacon, weeping slow, translucent tears of grease onto the dirt floor, while braids of garlic hang from the beams like pale, papery ghosts. There is a profound, quiet dignity in the way a woman seals a ceramic crock with a thick layer of rendered lard. It is a seal more reliable than any modern machine, a gesture of fierce defiance against the turning of the seasons.
It is a silent promise made to the children huddled by the hearth that the spring will find them still breathing, still whole. The iron key turns in the lock of the heavy oak door, the mechanical click echoing through the empty courtyard like a solitary heartbeat in the frost. Beneath the very floorboards where we stand, the earth remains a constant, cool embrace for the root vegetables huddled in their beds of dry sand, oblivious to the storm. We lean into this stillness, understanding that when the fires of our industry eventually fail, the only true power is the one stored in the silence of the larder, waiting for a thaw that feels a lifetime away, a thaw that can only be reached by following the silver thread of the river.
The stream is a ribbon of black glass, cutting a jagged path through the white shroud of the forest. Its voice is a low, melodic gurgle, muffled beneath a skin of ice that groans under the weight of the coming winter. A man kneels at the bank, his breath blooming in the freezing air like a pale, fraying veil. He does not reach for a pump or a plastic jug. He carries a vessel of boiled leather, stitched with waxed sinew and toughened by 1,000 summers. His hands, reddened and cracked by the bite of the frost, move with the practiced grace of a priest at an altar as he clears a circle of slush. To him, water is not a utility that flows from a hidden pipe. It is a pilgrimage, a daily reckoning with the source of all motion. He understands the secret, silent geography of the land, the way the water filters through the deep, cold limestone, purified by the crushing weight of the mountain itself. There is a sacred geometry in the way he constructs his filter within a hollowed log, layering charcoal, fine sand, and crushed pebbles with the patience of a stonecutter. He watches the murky runoff enter the top and emerge at the base as clear and precious as a saint's tear. It is a slow, meditative process, a quiet rejection of the modern demand for instant abundance. Here, every drop is measured against the effort of its retrieval, a currency of sweat and endurance that makes the water taste of iron, moss, and ancient stone. As he lifts the heavy wooden yoke to his shoulders, the bucket swaying with a rhythmic, mournful creak, he passes the skeletal remains of an old water wheel, frozen in its mossy housing like a forgotten god. It stands as a reminder that the world once ran on the pulse of the river, a mechanical heartbeat that required no oil, only the gravity of the heavens. The weight pressing into his spine is not a burden, it is the grounding reality of life itself. The path back to the village is steep and slick with ice, and with every grueling step, the slosh of the water reminds him that he is bound to the earth by a silver thread that no storm can sever. But while the water sustains the body, it cannot mend the tools that break, and the village now looks toward the glowing maw of the forge to survive the coming night. The forge is a cavern of soot and shadows, a subterranean pocket of heat where the only light is the incandescent heart of the charcoal bed. You hear it before the warmth reaches you, the rhythmic, bellows-driven sigh of the fire, a dragon's breath that tastes of sulfur and scorched earth. The blacksmith stands over the anvil, his face a mask of salt sweat and flickering orange light, cradling a piece of iron that glows with the terrifying intensity of a dying star. This is the alchemy of necessity. In a world without the cold indifference of factories, every tool is a soul forged in agony and heat, a physical manifestation of a man's will to impose order upon the savage, unyielding chaos of the wild. He strikes the metal, and the ring of the hammer is a bell tolling for the old ways, a sound that carries across the frozen mud of the village like a summons. Each blow is a word in a brutal metal language, shaping the plowshare that will break the stubborn, frost-locked sod, or the axe that will fell the great winter oak. This is the ultimate survival skill, the ability to mend what is broken and to summon what is missing from the very bones of the earth. We have grown fragile in an age of disposability, where a hairline fracture in a gear means a discarded machine. But here, the smith breathes life back into the scrap, folding the steel, tempering its spirit in the dark, stagnant water of the stone trough, and birthing a tool meant to outlast the very man who hammered it into being. The sudden, violent hiss of steam as the blade is quenched is the sound of a contract being signed with the future. The iron is hard now, etched with the jagged scars of the hammer, but possessing a keen, merciless edge that reflects the flickering torches. The blacksmith wipes his brow with a soot-stained sleeve, looking at the finished work with a quiet, weary pride that needs no audience. He knows that when the great, complex machines of the future eventually grind to a rusted halt, the world will return to the primordial heat of the forge. The power to create is the only power that truly endures, a flickering flame kept alive in the calloused palms of those who refuse to be helpless, even as the wolves begin to circle the high mountain pastures.
In the high mountain pastures, the air is thin and sharp, tasting of crushed thyme and the metallic electric promise of approaching snow. A shepherd moves through the gray milk of the mist, a ghost in a landscape that has forgotten the sun. His presence is signaled only by the hollow, rhythmic clanking of a bell and the soft, repetitive thud of a wooden staff against the ancient stone. He wears a cloak of raw, unwashed wool, heavy, coarse, and pungent with the natural lanolin that sheds the mountain rain like the feathers of a wild duck. He is not a master of this land, but a part of its breathing rhythm. He is an observer of the subtle shifts in the wind that speak of coming storms long before the clouds gather their strength. His power does not come from a hum of a battery or the spark of a machine, but from a terrifying intimacy with the living world. He knows the secret, bitter language of the earth, the way the white yarrow blooming by the sheepfold can staunch a bleeding wound, and how the stars, when they finally pierce the veil of fog, align to guide him back to the safety of a dry stone hut. This is the skill of navigation and herbal lore, a mental map of a world that possesses no borders, only the stark boundaries of survival. He carries a small pouch of dried curds and a heel of hard, blackened bread, sustenance that requires no fire to keep his heart beating through the long, frozen watch. There is an invisible, unbreakable thread stretched between the man, his flock, and the mountain, a trinity of endurance that has remained unchanged since the first stones were laid for the Roman roads that now crumble beneath the moss. As the sun finally dips below the jagged obsidian peaks, painting the sky in deep bruises of purple and gold, he finds shelter in a natural alcove of rock. He does not fear the coming dark, for he knows the language of the owls and the heavy, comforting weight of the silence. He wraps his cloak tighter, feeling the small, miraculous warmth of his own breath against his chest. In the valley below, they may rely on the humming wires and the fragile lights of the town, but up here, survival is a quiet, internal fire, a steadfast refusal to be moved by the immense, indifferent weight of the wilderness. It is a stillness that mirrors the quiet, green wisdom of the monastery walls, where other secrets are waiting to be unearthed.
The monastery garden is a tapestry of muted greens and skeletal browns, a fragile sanctuary sheltered from the biting mountain wind by high, weeping walls of crumbling limestone. Here, beneath the shadow of the bell tower, a monk moves with a slow, deliberate stoop, his sandals whispering against the frost-nipped soil. His fingers are permanently stained, dyed by the dark ink-like juice of elderberries and the fine yellow dust of dried lichen. He is the keeper of the physic garden,
a living library where every trembling leaf and stubborn root is a word of power spoken against the terrifying frailty of the flesh. In an age where a simple scratch or a sudden fever could be a death sentence, this knowledge of the earth is the only true medicine, a biological generator of life that requires no fuel but the sun and the rain. He harvests the willow bark to cool the blood of the feverish, and gathers raw honey from the straw skeps to seal the open wound, his movements a silent prayer in motion. There is a deep, resonant silence in the way he prepares his stores, hanging the herbs in heavy bundles from the blackened oak rafters. As they dry, they release the ghost of old summers into the chilled air, a scent of thyme and chamomile that battles the smell of damp stone. We have traded this ancestral wisdom for sterile rooms and the cold comfort of white pills, forgetting that the forest was once our pharmacy and the meadow our only sanctuary. The monk understands what we have lost, that survival is not just found in the strength of the arm or the sharpness of the sword, but in the clarity of the mind, the humble ability to see a cure hidden within the common weed. As the heavy bronze bell begins to ring for vespers, its tolling vibrates through the very roots of the trees. The monk pauses, his weathered hands resting on the rough, knotted bark of an ancient apple tree. The light is failing now, casting long, skeletal shadows across the rows of lavender and sage. He feels the weight of a profound lineage, the healers who kept the flickering light of knowledge burning through the darkest of centuries. When the artificial comforts of the future eventually vanish, it is this quiet green wisdom that will remain, a testament to the earth's enduring mercy. But as the shadows grow long, the solitary monk looks toward the village, where a different kind of warmth is gathering around the communal fire.
The village square is a mosaic of mud and moonlight, a cold, fractured mirror reflecting the last of the evening's light as it clings to the thatched roofs like a dying ember. The wind carries the scent of frost and iron, but at the center of the dark, a different power is rising. A group of men and women are gathered around the communal oven, its great stone belly radiating a deep, penetrating heat that smells of toasted flour, charred oak, and wood smoke. This is the heart of the community, a shared sanctuary that belongs to no one and yet to everyone. In the medieval world, survival is never a solitary act. It is a collective endeavor, a weaving together of fragile individual lives into a single unbreakable cord. They share the warmth, the stories, and the crushing burden of the watch. One man brings the wood, his back bent from the weight of the forest. Another brings the grain, the last of his summer's toil. A third brings the quiet skill to temper the heat, knowing exactly when the stone is ready. This is the human generator, a social technology of mutual aid that has been slowly eroded by our modern illusion of independence. We believe we are safe because we have built our own walls and bought our own machines. But when the wires fail and the humming boxes go silent, we find ourselves shivering and alone. Here, the heat of the oven is more than a utility. It is a metaphor for the heat of the tribe, a fire that is kept burning not by fuel alone, but by the simple, sacred act of looking out for one's neighbor. As the last loaf is pulled from the oven, its crust crackling in the sharp air like breaking ice, the people begin to disperse into the shadows. They carry the physical warmth of the encounter back to their own separate hearths, a shared heat to sustain them through the long, freezing night. Above, the stars are jagged and indifferent, watching the small, desperate dramas of the humans below with a cold, celestial silence. But in the brief touch of a hand or the quiet sharing of a crust, there is a defiance that the stars can never touch.
This is the final and most vital skill of all, the realization that to survive the coming dark, we must become the light for one another, a living circuit of compassion that no storm can ever truly extinguish.